Hey friends, welcome to Your Story Matters podcast. My name is Michaela, and I am so happy you're here. My hope for this show is that we experience the power of storytelling and understand that we are the main characters in our story so that we can live as our truly authentic selves. You're in the right place to hear real stories that will challenge, inspire, and encourage you on your personal growth journey. I hope you enjoy. Today on the show is Dr. Janelle Martin. Dr. Janelle Martin is a licensed professional counselor, biofield therapist, certified IASIS microcurrent neurofeedback provider, and doctor of functional medicine. She is the founder of The Mind Connection, a holistic mental health and wellness practice in the Houston, Texas area, where she helps individuals heal from trauma, addiction, anxiety, and emotional dysregulation through innovative, integrative approaches. Janelle is also the award-winning author of Losing Her, Finding Us, a powerful memoir that chronicles her daughter's battle with addiction and their family's journey from brokenness to recovery and hope. Blending professional expertise with lived experience, Janelle is passionate about helping others understand the connection between the brain, body, and emotional healing while offering hope to families navigating addiction and mental health challenges. Here's our conversation. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Your Story Matters podcast. I am so happy that you've taken time out of your day to spend it with me, and I am happy to be spending time with my new friend, Janelle Martin. Janelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And everyone, if you're watching on YouTube or Apple or Spotify, can we just appreciate the office that is behind Janelle, because it is gorgeous. And you can see here, I have one picture in a too bright of a lamp and dead space. But this is gorgeous, what we have going on here. Very cozy, very comfortable. And we'll talk all about the room and kind of what all goes on there. But first, we always ask this big overarching question on the show. So Janelle, what is your story?
So take it away, right? Okay. So my story began about 10 years ago. Well, let's go back 20 years. I married young, and I always tell people I don't recommend that. But I was 20, but I was married for 12 years, had 2 children, and that marriage fell apart. And it was a very, very ugly divorce, custody battles, all of it. And that's kind of where it started. Was I never saw myself being single mom. I never saw myself being divorced. Of course, life takes its own turns. And so this is where I found myself, but also in a very contentious relationship with my kid's father, who it got worse after I remarried. So I was single for about 5 years or so. And my kids were 3 and 5 when we divorced. So they were very young. My ex-husband had become abusive, both emotionally and verbally, and he was physical. And that was my cue to leave. It's hard to weigh that decision. I had 2 very young children, and we owned a business together and worked together as well. So we were very entangled, and it was a very difficult choice to make. But at the time, my daughter was 3, her brother was 5. But looking at my daughter, my thought at the time was, I can't allow her to grow up thinking what's happening here is normal, that the way I was being treated was normal, because I knew that she would likely end up in the same situation, because it would be her normal if that's what was allowed for her to grow up in. So she was sort of my life savior at the time, because I think maybe if I had had 2 sons, I might have thought about it differently. But since she was a girl, it just occurred to me I couldn't allow this for her. So I chose to be the one to leave the marriage. It was very difficult. He wasn't happy about it. He was very controlling. But I did get out of that situation, and I got on my own with my children, moved out into the country, and really tried to rebuild my life. And I met someone a few years later, and he was everything that I wanted and was willing to help me raise my kids. His kids were almost completely grown. So he had 3 of his own, but they didn't live in the same state. So he kind of came in at a time that simultaneously my kid's father moved out of the state. So he packed up and left and went to Illinois, to the Midwest, where we were both from, and left me here with my kids. I have no family here. We moved here right after I graduated college, and we lived here the entire time we were married. So So I was here by myself with my kids, simultaneously met my new husband, who would become my new husband, thankfully. And so he kind of stepped in where my kid's dad left. He was here for all the day-to-day stuff. So he coached the teams and he went to the practices and helped me get in places and did all the things that a parent would do. And I do believe my ex-husband realized that after he had left, and he did not like that. So he really, I'm speculating here, but this is what it felt like, and this is how it played out, that he really wanted my life to be miserable, and he did not want our children to accept or love their stepdad. So he did everything in his power to make sure that that didn't happen, even from a distance. So our children would have to travel to see their dad, and they did. We usually split holidays like Christmas 1 week here and 1 week there, and he got spring breaks most of the time. And when they were young, he got all the summer, the whole summer. So, and then, as we could manage it during the year, which was difficult. Weekends were just so hard. And then they got into sports and they got into activities. So that just made everything even harder. And there were times where they wouldn't be able to travel because they had a game or they had something they wanted to do here. And I would get blamed that I was keeping them from him and it was my fault. And it just was very contentious in our home because every time they would come back from their visits, they were hearing a lot of chatter and they were hearing negative things about me and my husband. And, I'm sorry you have to live with these people and I'm sorry you have to deal with them and those kinds of things. And just planting those seeds of like, clearly your parents are negative. And there was always this period of time when they would come back, not necessarily with my daughter, because she did have a really good relationship with her stepdad. But my son, who wanted the approval of his dad, he was a little bit older and he really seemed to buy into all of that. And so it was really contentious in our home for a lot of years, a lot of just tension and me feeling like I'm in the middle of something that I didn't want to be in the middle of, trying to manage, just the schedule with my kids and the schedule with their dad. And then I have my new husband here. He's in the home. He's trying to be, the provider, and he is the provider and he is doing all of the work, but he's not getting very much appreciation for that, especially from my son. And he did coach the teams and he did all the things and really tried hard. And it was hard because he wasn't appreciated. And a lot of times he was ignored or bypassed, everything fell on me. And then there was some contention between the two of us because he wanted to be important to them too. And I couldn't make that happen. And it just was really hard. It felt like an attack all the time. And I tried to do the best I could do with it just to try to keep the peace. I'm a pretty good, I just need peace in my life. I want to keep the peace. So we'll fast forward a little bit. In high school, when my son got into high school and turned 15, he'd been primed. My ex-husband had told him, as soon as you're 15, the law is you get to go to the judge and you can tell the judge you want to live with him. And as long as you say that, that's what's going to happen. And so as soon as weeks before he turned 15, he had been there for part of the summer. He had to come home because he played football. So he had to be home for football in July. So this was a time when my kids could not go visit their dad at the same time because they played different sports and their schedules were different. So, and of course they always flew. So my son had the first half of the summer and my daughter was going to go for the later half or something. And, this particular summer was weird because after my son got there, within just a few days, I didn't hear from him for weeks. It was very weird. So in my gut, I knew something was happening. I didn't really know what, but I knew something was going on. But then when he came home, he was very angry. He was very weepy. He was emotional. It was a mess. And within a couple of days, I got served with papers that my ex-husband was suing for custody. And he was really suing for custody of my son, but my daughter was added in for collateral damage. I mean, she just was added in there because it looked bad to only file for one. And she'd not been consulted, nor did she know that this was what he was planning on doing. So she was in 8th grade at that time. It's a very pivotal time for young girls. Life's changing. She's about to hit high school. A lot's happening. And now this has been thrown upon her. And it was not far ahead of her 13th birthday, I think. It would have been 13 because my son was turning 15. So he was well aware, but my daughter was not. And there was a whole lot of stuff that happened at that time, but she realized like the full weight of the world just fell on her shoulders, that this wasn't about her. This was all about her brother. Nobody cared about her. Her dad didn't love her the same. And nobody asked her. Nobody asked her what she wanted. And she didn't want to go anywhere. She had friends in her life here and her sports here and all of that. So she had no intention of wanting to go, but it didn't seem to matter what she thought because they didn't care. They had kind of ganged up on her, and tried to pressure her to go along with what they wanted to do. And so, of course, we went to court and we had to do all the things. And it was terrifying for me. I think we had some blessings in that time. We had to hire an attorney for the children, which if you've not done that, man, it is hard to just hand over your kids to a stranger that you've never met and trust them to make the right decision for your family and for your children. And we didn't have a choice in that. We didn't get to pick the person. The court picks the person. So this is just how it works. And, but we were blessed with a man who had years and years and years of experience doing this. And he was able to figure out what was going on. And that was the first time in that whole process that I heard the term parental alienation. I did not know that was a thing. I didn't know it was a word for it. And I didn't know that's really what was happening in our situation. But my attorney said, this is what's going on, and it's very difficult to prove in a court. A lot of times it's impossible to prove, and the courts, very much emphasize that the children need both parents, and so they don't really intervene in things like this. And I was on the defense too, because I was being sued for custody. So there was just so much confusion on my part, and just I was naive about things, and I always just believed the best in people. And so it's hard for me to reconcile that my life had become this giant ball of chaos that I felt completely out of control of. And I really was. And I have my daughter over here crying because nobody loves her. And my son is angry because he wants his way and can't understand why it wouldn't be better for him to leave his life here at 15 as a sophomore in high school. He's grown up here and this, just like you can't reason with a 14, 15-year-old either when they've been fed a bunch of junk about you. So we went through this whole process, but the blessing was the amicus for them was well aware of these situations and was able to figure it out very quickly. Every one of us was interviewed completely separately. So we did not get a group thing. It was all done separately. And it was weeks before we got any information about what might happen. So he ultimately, by, I would say October, November that year, so this all started in the summer, his ruling or his opinion was used by the judge. And that's what we were told. Whatever he decided, the judge would go with. And his opinion was that the kids were better off staying where they were. And he did not want to split them up. And so my son could not go live with his dad, and my daughter didn't want to. So she was happy. But from that moment on, she was the enemy. She was the one that thwarted their plans. She didn't go along, and now we're mad at her. So they made her life miserable. And like I said, she was 13 at this time. So by the time my son graduated high school, their relationship that had always been super close was completely ugly. It was horrible. He verbally abused her. He physically abused her, my son. He took his anger out on her because she was an easier target than I was. I was still the parent in the house, and he broke her. He really did. I mean, her heart was completely broken by losing her brother. And then when he graduated, he left and he went to live with his dad as he wanted to, which that's fine. When you're done with school, that you can do what you want. Chose to go to college up there, all the things. And she attempted to try to hold on to that relationship with him. They did mend it before he left some. She ended up taking him to his senior prom, and so they kind of reconnected at the very end, but then he left and her heart was broken again. Now she's alone here. He's out of state. Her brother's gone. And I don't know when she started using drugs to cope with her pain, but it wasn't long after that. I would say within a year. And I'm not sure if in the book she says exactly when. I think she does. But this is where I wrote a book about this experience because it has to do with my son too, but I wrote about the drug experience because this was something that monumentally changed my life and actually changed it for the better. So she started using drugs. I had no idea. I've never used drugs in my life. I've never been around people that use drugs that I know of. I did drink alcohol socially. That was always very well known and not hidden from my kids. So that was not anything that was out of control by any means. But the depth of my daughter's pain, I was not aware of. I knew she was in pain. I didn't know the depths. And so she started using drugs. Weird things started happening in the house. I couldn't figure out what it was. My husband he's very intuitive, my current husband. And so he was one kind of in my ear, making me really angry because he was like, something's going on. Like, I don't know what it is. He wouldn't really say that it was drugs, but then eventually he did. He's like, she's on something. She's doing something. I did not want to believe that. I could not believe that. That was just out of I don't know, my whole world. It just could not fathom that I would have a child using drugs. So, but it became apparent and I did learn firsthand that she was using drugs, but from a friend who sent me a photo of her actually using. And it was sent to me, not like to tell on her, but it was sent to me because she'd known my daughter since they were babies, basically. And they were in the same grade and grew up together, not in the same friend group so much, but just knowing each other. But she was very concerned about the escalation in my daughter's drug use and who she was hanging around. And she wanted me to know. And really, it was such an act of bravery on her part as teens, because I've had to promise her that I wouldn't tell my daughter who told me because the backlash, would not have been fair to her because I appreciated so much that she reached out to me. She didn't have to do that. So once I was clued in, of course, we had the conversation. I confronted my daughter. She didn't deny it. We told her she had to stop, which is what you say, right? Can't even grasp that this is happening, but of course you have to stop. You can't, I told her at the time, you can't live in this house. I can't have this around me. I can't have it on my property. I can't. You can't do this. It's not how you cope with things. And she was very sad. She told me she was sad. She wanted to see a counselor. So at that point, I said, I'll do anything. What do you want? You want a dog? Okay. You want to go to counseling? Okay. You don't want to go back to this high school? Okay. We'll find another one. You can't do drugs. You cannot do drugs. And interestingly enough, she never said at the time she was not going to do drugs anymore. She never said it. I said it a million times. She never said it. We did get her a dog and we did get her a counselor. However, I was unaware at the time that there were different kinds of counselors. I thought counselor's a counselor. So I didn't seek out a counselor that had drug addiction in their title or even their history. I just sought out a counselor. And she very quickly figured out that this woman had no idea about drugs and no idea about what she was going through. And so she went high. I think she went 3 or 4 times. The first time she gave it her best shot, and that she instantly realized, she was very astute, that she wasn't going to be helpful. And so she just went high for the next few times. And then she told me she didn't need to go anymore. She was fine. And she hid it for a while, her use. She continued to use. And then by Christmas, and this would have been her senior year now, by Christmas, a lot of weird things were happening. And I wasn't ready to actually accept that it was really drugs. But I caught her by the grace of God being somewhere. She was somewhere she shouldn't have been. And she lied about where she was, basically. And I caught her and confronted her again. And she was still very high. And it was the weekend before New Year's. She already had a trip planned to go see her dad before school was to start in January. She was leaving on New Year's Day. So this was the weekend. I think New Year's Day was Monday. So this would have been like a Friday. And confronted her. She had absolutely nothing to say to her for herself. She did not care. She was actually like shut off. That's how I can describe it. Like she was completely cut off. She just showed no emotion. She didn't care. I could yell at her, say whatever I wanted to say. Her face didn't change. It was just like she wasn't even there. And I did the only thing I could think to do was to call up her dad and put it on speakerphone. I threw it down on the bed and he answered. And I said, when she gets on the plane on Monday, she's not coming home. if she's using drugs, I'm not having it. And so you can deal with it. So she's going to pack as much as she can get on that plane and she'll stay with you for the rest of, I guess, whatever. And for a while. So I know that shocked her. But later I found out in writing the book that she was actually very excited about that because she didn't really have a parent-child relationship with her dad. She felt like she could go there and she would just be roommates with him and he wouldn't try to parent her because he never had. And she'd just live out her, she needed one semester of school. She would graduate in May and she would go on about her life and she'd be able to do whatever she wanted to do and he wouldn't care. So she thought that was the best thing ever. I did not know that at the time. My heart was broken. I feel like I'm sending my kid to the devil, the man who's already, because at that point, my son had not been in my life for about a year. So my son had left my life just about 2 months after he moved out. So he'd taken one child from me, which is my viewpoint, and now I'm about to hand over the other one. But I did hold firm to my boundaries that no drugs in my home. This isn't okay. So I did. That's what happened. She packed up and she went to live with her dad and finish out high school. Although I didn't know it at the time, she wouldn't end up finishing high school. She didn't make it 3 months with him. He did try to parent her. He did try to be who he should have always been. And it became a very contentious, I use that word a lot, contentious, became very contentious between them. She got very, very angry with him for even attempting to parent her and trying to tell her what she could and couldn't do and making all these rules and doing all the things that he was right in doing. But for her, it just brought all this anger up for him. And it ended up, she shaved her head. She had hair down to her hips. And we call it her Britney Spears moment. Basically, she was just crying out for help. She was so angry and so hurt. And she ended up blowing up one night. She had run away. She was doing all kinds of things. She was still using there. She found the crowd almost immediately that she wanted to hang out with. And it just got to a crisis moment where my ex-husband, who I had been divorced from for 8, 10, 12 years at this point, calls me crying because he no longer knows what to do with her. They had had a physical altercation. She had said some very ugly things to him. She had told him she hated him. He was a horrible parent, just all the things. And he was at his wit's end. He's like, I don't know what to do here. I'm afraid because the cops had been called, like just all the things, a mess. I'm in Texas. He's in Arizona at this point. This is where they are. They are not anywhere I can get there. I'm refereeing on the phone between the two of them at this point. And the only thing I can think of is we need help. Like this, I can't have her come home like this. And I don't even know this child. This has never been somebody that I've seen, but I need help. We need help. I don't know what to tell him other than I'm hoping she doesn't really mean what she's saying because he's just heartbroken too. And so anyway, I get on Google and I'm looking up treatment centers for this daughter that is using drugs, but I don't believe she's an addict because I can't wrap my mind around it. But clearly this has become something that we are not handling well. And I don't want this child in my home in this state and he can't have her there. We don't have any other options. So talk about prayer. So I am praying just fervently, not sleeping, Googling treatment for teens. She was still only 17 at this point. And the same one kept coming up and it happened to be in Phoenix, which is that coincidence? No, I don't believe in coincidences, but Phoenix was about, I think 2.5 hours from them. So not close, but certainly closer than Texas. So I ended up calling them, talking to them. They assured me this is what they do. It happened to be a teen and adolescent focused treatment. So the treatment plan that they do there is 2.5 years long. So again, this is so new to me. I can't wrap my mind around it, but all I know is we need help. And they're assuring me if we can get her to them, this is the Pathway program, and they're actually in Tempe, Arizona. If we can get her to them, they promised me that they would be able to convince her to stay and start the program. Okay, well, I'm not there. So I have to get my ex-husband, her dad, to get her in the car and get her there. And we were still not sure about dropping out of high school, to do this. Like, what's the right thing? She's got a couple of months and she'll graduate. But so we just kind of tabled that. Like, let's go just talk to these people. You take her down there. At this point, she wasn't even speaking to her dad. She wanted nothing to do with him. She wouldn't look at him. She wouldn't talk to him. She did get in the car with him and agree to go. I got her to agree to go. And really she agreed because she didn't want to be around him anymore and I wouldn't allow her to come home. So she was like, I'll go wherever you want me to go as long as I can get away from him. Okay. Whatever it takes, right? That's fine. So he takes her there. They talk to Kyle, who is their manager. He manages the place and talks to her and talks to him. I think I even got to get on the phone at some point, but they ended up convincing her to stay there. And she did. She went into their inpatient treatment, which meant she did have to drop out of high school. What we learned is that if she continued using the way she was using, the question really wasn't about finishing school or not. It was really about life or death. She may not live long enough to finish high school if she doesn't get help. And then what good is a college or a high school diploma? It doesn't matter. So it's hard to grasp that as a parent. I know I struggled with it, but her life meant more to me at that point than school, even though all of my dreams for my daughter have been dashed at this point. Like, we all have dreams and hopes for our kids, and you just see them just like they're gone. This is not the path that I chose for her. But this is the path we're on. So she ends up staying. She goes into their inpatient treatment for 8 weeks. Actually 6, I think, 6, 7 weeks. And she gets out and she goes into the outpatient program, which is 8 weeks. And so she ended up staying with another family there in Phoenix since we're not there. And then she stayed for a full 10 months at Pathway and got sober and worked through some things. It was very, very difficult, but it was a very intensive program. And I'm so grateful because her counselor there saved her life. Like, literally saved her life. But her counselor had to be really hard on her to crack her open because she was planning on fooling everyone, getting sober, turning 18, leaving, going and using drugs until she killed herself. That was her plan. I didn't know that at the time, but that is exactly what she planned on doing. And this counselor was an angel. She was able to get my daughter to crack open and start to do some healing. And it took a long, long time for her to heal completely. But without that, I don't know where we would be today. So she stayed 10 months. I would go visit her. We'd have girl weekends and I'd take her shopping and I, slowly transformed her wardrobe from this baggy, drab, like death looking stuff to adding some color back into her life. And her hair starting to grow out and starting to look like her light's coming back into her because it had certainly gone out before she had ever even left Texas. So after about 10 months there, she was homesick and wanted to move home. So I let her come home and was excited about having her come home. I flew out to Arizona and we drove her car home and her dog, and we were just happy as could be. And unfortunately, but even though I'd been to all the parent meetings every week, I had gotten a sponsor, I'd done my 12-step work, I really dove into recovery alongside her so I could understand it. But there was still some things that I didn't grasp. And her coming home was not necessarily a bad thing, but what we didn't have was a plan for her for support here. All her support was in Arizona. I had support. She didn't. And a part of me, I think, thought she's healed. She's cured. Everything's going to be fine. 10 months is a long time to be in treatment. So, and she was good. Like, she was sober. And, but she came back and it was quite a shock to, I think, both of us that no longer did she have friends here, sober friends. And she hadn't lived in Texas for a year and everybody else had moved on. They had all graduated and moved on. So it was just a very sort of strange place for her to be in. And she ended up reconnecting with a couple of old friends that she used with back then and started using again. And so she relapsed. And this time, though, she came and told me because clearly she knew my rules. And I told her she had to pack up, take her dog with her, and she had to leave. And she did. And she went out again for about 3 or 4 weeks using. It was so heartbreaking. I could not understand why she would want to throw everything away and do that. But she had to decide on her own to be sober. I couldn't do it for her. I couldn't make the decision for her. And it wasn't even an argument when she left. It was me just accepting that this is her choice. And she, at that point, was 18 and an adult. And there wasn't much I could do about it. So let her go. And then she called me on March 15th, 7 years ago, 2019. She called me and said, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. I want to get sober. I'll do anything. I'll go back to treatment. If I have to go back to Pathway, I'll go back. I'll do whatever. I've already made phone calls. She had already started the process of figuring out what she needed to do. And I just said, come home. You can come home. We can figure this out, So she didn't believe me, and she was an hour and a half away. But I was like, you just come home and let's figure this out. So she did. And she's been 7 years sober now. 2026, 7 years. So she has stayed sober. But at that point, we got support for her. We got counselors for her. I mean, she finished the healing she started, and she was all in. She was all in and done with drugs and done with being miserable and wanted love back in her life. And so it took a while, but she did the work, and I gave her a place to be while she was working on that. And in the meantime, my life completely changed because I went through a 12-step program simultaneously as her. And out of that experience, I became a licensed chemical dependency counselor, a neurofeedback provider, and I've had my own private practice now for 7 years. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I am a biofield practitioner. And my daughter came to me 4 years ago and asked to work with me. So for the last 4 years, we have been working side by side and helping other people heal. And that to me is the miracle that we went through such hard stuff, and to come together like we are now as colleagues, as best friends, as mother-daughter, it's really mind-blowing to me. I would have never dreamed that this would be our life. My son is still not in my life, and he's not really in hers either. So that is a chapter that has not been played out yet, but she is in contact with him here and there. She went to his wedding last year. She did forgive her dad about 3 or 4 years ago. She went through the 12 steps with an older woman sponsor, not older, but older than her, and really dove into that making amends step. And she made amends with her brother, and she made amends with her dad. And so they do have a relationship, but it is on her terms. If it ever gets to be unhealthy for her, she will cut it off, but he has honored her boundaries and her wishes. And so they do maintain contact. They don't see each other very often. I think she's only seen him twice in 7 years, past 7 years, and once was at her brother's wedding last year. So that they are trying to repair or maintain some semblance of relationship. But on my end, my story has a happy ending. I don't think it's ended yet. I just keep growing and keep doing and keep learning. I've gone back and got my master's degree to get my professional counseling license. I keep looking for new and better ways to help people heal naturally. Since I come from an addiction background and an addiction journey, I do not offer medications, and I help people to avoid that or to be able to get off of those or minimize them if they're already taking them. So our business is naturally helping people without substances, and we do help people who want to be in recovery. And I've written a book about my journey. And the book is called Losing Her, Finding Us. And the unique thing about this book is, yes, it has all the butterflies around me. It has a butterfly on the front. But the biggest thing about this book is it's the book that I wanted to read when I was going through it, because I always wanted to know what was going on with the parent and what was going on with the child. Because if the parent wrote the book, you only got their perspective. And if the recovering person wrote the book, then you got their story. But I wanted both, because I just wanted, if the kid was doing well, then okay, or not doing well, where was the parent? And if the kid's not doing well, what was the parent doing? And what was the child thinking? And, and this book has both. So I interviewed my daughter for every single chapter. So you get what's happening with me, and then you get what was going on with her in the same chapter. And it gives a unique perspective to what was going on with her versus what was going on with me, because we didn't see it the same way. I mean, not to surprise anyone, but the adult brain and the kid brain, the adolescent brain, that we're not the same. And so I think it's so insightful for people to get both sides. And I'm super proud of this book. It reads like a fiction book. But I interviewed her and I transcribed her words for every part that she plays in this book. So it is like hearing directly from her. And I'm so grateful that she was brave enough to be so honest and give all of the information that she wanted to give to help other people who may be struggling as well.
What has been the biggest takeaways from all of your research and certifications as you've now moved your life in a way of helping people when it comes to the brain, when it comes to addiction, when it comes to being a parent of someone who is using, how to support friends who maybe their kids are using? Yeah, what are some of your biggest takeaways from the last several years?
Biggest takeaway is, as a parent, it's not your fault if this happens to you. If your child makes these decisions, it's not because you did or didn't do something. If you're using drugs with your child, okay, you play a part in that. Most of us don't do that. Most of us love our children. We want the best for them. And we have to hold on to that. We didn't cause this to happen. This is a choice that they made. Now that that choice has been made and we may be in the muck of it, it's up to us to figure out what to do about it. And the sooner you act, the better off everyone could be, because once they turn 18, you don't have the power to get them into treatment. So that is a huge thing to know. When your young teenage person is using and they are, please don't sit in denial and wait till they turn 18 and hope it gets better. Do something about it. And also don't blame yourself. Don't blame yourself. So that's a big one. The other one is the 12-step program is life-changing. And I never knew anything about the 12-step program until I was in it. And I'm so grateful to have had a wonderful sponsor and gone through the steps. I've even sponsored other moms. And that's been one of the highlights of my life, is just taking their hand and walking them through. And the transformation that the 12 steps can provide for a person is beyond anything you can imagine. I do believe this should be taught in schools, not for people necessarily with addiction, but just as a way of life. It teaches accountability. It teaches faith. It teaches making amends and saying you're sorry when you hurt somebody. And it teaches giving back to other people. Who doesn't want to live that way? So a huge takeaway for me is a 12-step program doesn't have to be scary. It's life-changing, and let it change you, because here I am. I'm a completely different person. Not that I was a bad person before, but I never dreamed this is where I would be and what I would get to do. And I love the gifts that I'm able to give back to other people. I even hosted Parents of Addicted Loved Ones meetings every Wednesday night for 7 years. I ended that this year because my business is so busy. I just couldn't do it all anymore. But those parents have my heart, and I'm still here for them. But, the 12-step program, you may not end up being a healer like me, but you may find a better version of yourself. In fact, I would say you will find a better version of yourself. And you may not see today what that even is.
Yeah. Why butterflies?
Transformation. Because we've been through it and we believe that anyone can change. And I get asked that a lot. People say, they'll never change. Well, never say never, because people can. They just have to want to. And the butterfly is the perfect, symbol of that. I mean, we tattooed this butterfly on our arms when Reagan finally got 1 year sober. It took her 2 years to get 1 year sober, but the butterfly it sure always reminds me of her.
Yeah, that's good. When looking back, such a big part of this show is transitions that we never saw coming, and how do we adapt? And most of the time it is a forceful adapt, whether it is a divorce or addiction or anything kind of in between. So granted, this is a very big brushstroke, looking back on the last 10, 15 years. But how do you stay sane of mind as best you can, as far as what do you do somatically? What do you do emotionally and spiritually too, as a parent, when everything has gone to hell in a handbasket? How do you stay or fight to stay centered in the midst of all of that?
That's a good question. When I was going through it, my faith, I grew up in church. So my faith was huge. And without Jesus, I would probably still be in a lump on my closet floor, So faith is huge. And I do think that it helps to view things as a positive, even when they're not. There's always something we can learn in situations, and there's always something we can take away. You may not see it in the midst of it, and that's okay. But on the other side of it, a lot of times we look back and think, man, if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be who I am today or where I am today. So I kind of needed that. And I'm old enough now to see that so many things in my past that seemed really hard and bad at the time were necessary for me to become the person that I am. And I didn't let anything steal my joy. I said this years ago when my husband was attacking me. I will not allow anyone to take that from me. You will not steal my joy. And that's a choice that we make. And I think realizing that we have choices, we can make choices for ourselves, and we don't have to just let life happen to us. We can do something about it is empowering. And it also gives you confidence and moves you forward. And so you can get to the other side of it.
That's so good. A big thing on this show and in my life is that nothing is wasted.
Yeah.
Having gone through career transitions, having gone through divorce myself. And so you find yourself when you're aware enough to be like, this is not going anywhere the way I thought it would go. And so there's a lot of living life open-handed in order to be like, you want some kind of stabilization, but just to know that whatever has happened, been done, all of those things, if you choose to, it can grow with you and you can learn. And I've said this before multiple times on the show, is that exactly the example of you writing this book for the you that didn't have the book when you were going through it. Sometimes those pivots in life, good, bad, or indifferent, lead us down the path to where we now become the thing that we never had. And then we use the rest of our lives and our time, giving back. And that's it's so hard that we have to go through it. Because I'm just sitting here listening to these stories for the last 4 years, like trying not to weep like a baby.
I know.
Of just like, it is so hard. But again, all of this hardship has led to something beautiful where now you work together. And that's amazing, hearing it from someone who has actually gone through it and having the parental side of it. So we're going to link the book in the description for anyone that is going through or knows someone, because it's hard. That's the only thing I can say of like, man, oh man. But as you said too, the individual is going to be the person who wants to change. There's nothing that we can do. There's no ultimate power that we have to make a decision for somebody else, because that just evokes autonomy, which as humans we have and we really enjoy, right? It's kind of our thing.
Yes.
So it's so encouraging to have this book, to have this business where you would have, I'm pretty sure you would never thought in a million zillion years, right? Especially at 3 years old when the divorce happens, at 12, 13 years old when transitions are happening in the next 5 years. So it's just like, it's wild to see a lifetime of here is what could happen. And butterflies are all around just to invoke transition. And I think we sometimes, I don't want to say we negate to mention how beautiful it is on the other side, but there can't be beauty without coming from a broken place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's what you choose to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. I always think it's there. It's just sometimes we can't see it, or we're choosing not to see it and focusing on the hard stuff instead of what we learned from it.
Absolutely.
There's always takeaways.
Always. No, thank you. Thank you for your time today. This has been absolutely wonderful and enlightening and encouraging. One more question as we are landing the plane here, though we could talk all day. I'll come.
Yes.
But what is your next chapter? There's been a lot of chapters in this book, and in fact, probably an entire scratch and a rewrite of your story,
yes,
as we have seen. But
yes,
what do you see for you now, personally, professionally, going forward?
I love what I do. My business has expanded, or our business. We are getting into frequency-based healing. And so we have just opened up biofield therapy, which I am just over the moon excited about, because it's going from just brain based to full body. And there's just so many things that we can do with this technology. And it has opened my mind to different types of spirituality and how we are all connected and how the universe, quantum physics is working. I am constantly learning. And so this is something that is just mind blowing to me and for our clients, but we have seen tremendous healing from it. And so we are just sort of going into new frontiers. And this is where I see myself is always looking for the next best way to offer help to people. And I don't see myself stopping that. I may write another book. I don't know. That's kind of on the shelf for me right now, but it's calling me a little bit, but I just am not sure yet about that. So my husband hopefully won't mind me saying this, but he just acknowledged a year ago that he had a problem with alcohol and got sober. And so he is now 13 months sober from alcohol. So I will tell you, the hits keep coming, but knowing what I know about recovery and my experience, I've been so much more helpful to him and I'm not angry at him. I don't need all of that. I understand it. So he has been on an amazing enlightening journey and recovery journey that I get to witness. And I have high hopes that something will happen there with him and my relationship. I don't know, but I see brightness coming from him and I'm excited about everything. Really.
Well, there's your next book. You now wrote the parental child version, and now you're going to write the spousal version. So
maybe
there you go. You can shout me out in the acknowledgments when it comes out in 5 years. No, but I think it's so cool that you get to see beautiful things just pop up all over. And that's not to say that once you go through one hard thing, that's the it. Nope. They just keep coming, right?
They do.
But a big part about this show and this platform and what you've modeled excellently is being rooted in something, whatever that is. And that could change depending on what it is. We evolve, we grow, we change, we can change our mind, but also never giving up and never learning, because the worst thing we can do is just stay stagnant.
Exactly.
And so a big part of storytelling is, how have we moved the needle? The needle is always moving us, but there comes a point where we can say, no, we're going to co-author this story.
Absolutely.
Whatever that may be. And so just really putting what power we can back into us, having, realistic expectations. I'm not out selling anything like woo-woo, but that's been so transformational in my life out of so much that I cannot control. I can control how I think about something, how I show up to something, and how I behave about the thing.
Absolutely.
And then learning all of the modalities into which we can better observe and channel what we learn into living life, because it is so short. And the fact that Reagan gets to help so many people, if she would not have been here 7-10 years ago, like none of that would have happened. You know what I mean? So like that makes me tearing up of just the hardships. Really, it means something.
Yeah, it does. And I get to witness it. And that's just the coolest gift too, is to watch her with people, because she has a way that I don't have. We're different, and she just has a way with people, and she works so well with our adolescent and teen crowd here. They just relate with her so well. And that is such a blessing, because kids need somebody they can relate to. And I'm a parent, so it's not that I would be not relatable to them, but man, when they see her, they're like, she's it.
Yeah.
I could talk to her.
Yeah.
So
it's a powerful thing. Janelle, thank you so much. I walk away from this changed, and it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, give it a rating and review while you're at it. It really goes a long way. And check out the show notes for all the ways to stay connected with me and our guests. Until the next episode.